Welcome to the Ultra High Net Worth Clients Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Broadhead. Today's incredible business owner guest is Ryan Davis. Ryan, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. My name is Ryan Davis. I'm the co-founder and COO of People First, which is a influencer marketing company that specializes in politics, advocacy, public health, and commercial work. And I came out of politics. I worked for a guy named Howard Dean, who ran for president in 2004. I went on to join the Obama campaign, and then helped start the social media team at an agency called Blue State Digital. So I've been in the digital organizing, digital strategy world for a couple decades now, which is a big thing to say.
hmm Wow. How did you find yourself in the politics marketing world?
Well, after I did the Dean campaign in 2004, on the digital team there just weren't that many folks who understood politics and digital at that point, and it was hard not to do it. Everyone was asking me to come, be a digital director on campaigns, so I did that for a while. And when Obama ran, I was young and inspired by his candidacy, so joined that, and then went the agency route with a company that sort of formed during the Obama years.
hmm Wow. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, because that campaign revolutionized political marketing. That must have been really exciting to lead the charge there.
Yeah, I mean, the Obama campaign had, just a wildly talented group of folks on the digital and communications teams. And, they all understood that there was this thing, social media, that had emerged just in the previous few years, and that they could really capture that Facebook and that YouTube energy and use that to organize in a new way. And, now it's that the playbook that the Obama campaign built was, is used by, pretty much every campaign now, but also applies to corporations and direct to consumer companies. The way of the personalization of the communications and the sort of spirit of bringing folks together, I think has really changed marketing in general, just beyond political marketing.
hmm Wow. Yeah, what has the kind of core foundations for political marketing evolved? I know that I get at least 30 texts a day, so it seems they're using SMS marketing a
Yeah,
lot.
SMS really came out of the 2016 campaign. Bernie was a big proponent of SMS, and it definitely has evolved as more channels. Obviously, the channels are different now. There's a lot more video now. It's much easier to donate. One-click donations, recurring donation, things like that weren't even possible in the Obama years. And so yeah, it's evolved. I think there are some things that are not as good. I think the Obama campaign really focused on storytelling, and a lot of campaigns now think of digital as basically an ATM. And you get a lot of those texts. I bet 99% of them are asking you for money, as opposed to trying to get you to do anything else or telling you a story. And I find that a little disappointing. And I do think that there'll be kind of a reboot where folks will, obviously raising money is important for a political campaign, but so is messaging and persuasion and all these other things. So I feel like there's some opportunity there to kind of go back to the core of the storytelling.
hmm Yeah. They're either asking for money or telling a story in hopes that I'll give money later.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times I unsubscribe, they continue.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a real issue, and a lot of Democratic consultants talk about this, right? With what we call these spam packs,
Yeah.
and essentially, people think they're donating to, the Harris campaign or to Trump, but they're really donating to some random pack that's probably spending 90% of what they fundraise on salaries for the people who work at the pack, and only
Oh,
spend a little
wow.
bit. So there's really, there's not that much accountability on who you're
Yeah.
giving to. So I urge folks, no matter who you're supporting in the presidential election, make sure you're either giving to the campaign or giving to a real PAC that's spending your money in a way that makes sense.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's a good call. Okay, so you were working on these monumental revolutionary political campaigns that like literally changed the world. And then you built the social media arm for what company was it?
Blue State Digital, which is
Blue State Digital.
now just Blue State because they're more than digital. And Blue
Hmm.
State was started by a group of folks who came out of the Dean campaign in '04, and Obama was sort of their first big client, and talk about a good client to get in the political space. Although remember, it wasn't the campaign that was going to win. The campaign that was going to win was the Clinton campaign. So the Obama campaign itself had a very startup atmosphere because it was like a bunch of people coming together. And campaigns are startups, right? Like you go from having one employee, the candidate, to having hundreds of employees and being all around the
Hmm.
country. And figuring out how to scale that kind of decentralized operation is really tough in general. But when you have like the deadline of the actual election, it becomes really exciting. So I find that people who come out of campaigns have, they have a startup mentality because they've kind of been through that process before, and it's not scary to them.
Hmm. Awesome. So what was it like building you said you built the social media department?
Yeah, I was the first social media director, and people used to make fun of my title. They were like, social media director, what, you just on Facebook all day? But it was interesting because I was able to basically work on strategy with a lot of large organizations like um, the American Red Cross and to corporations like Ford, who wanted to sort of integrate an Obama-esque personal social media strategy into their campaign. So I started there as an account manager, and in an agency that's a tough life. You're running 5 to 10 accounts, and you don't get to dive as deeply into strategy. But then when I got to spin off and start that social media team, really got to focus on the strategy and the creative around social media. And in those days, social media was mostly Facebook and
Twitter.
YouTube and Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. So, obviously a ton has changed. So you said that was 2012,
That was 2010.
2010. Okay,
Yeah.
even earlier. Obviously, a lifetime of changes have occurred. But what worked on social media then, and does that still work, or is it a completely different strategy that works on social media now?
So that's a great question, and it actually sort of ties into what I do now. But back in the mid 2000s, it was easier to create content that had virality. There were way fewer people creating content, and you could really manipulate the algorithms and the blogosphere, which barely exists anymore, and things like that, to get content out. And you could also get folks to create a lot of user generated content. Like folks still thought it was interesting to see themselves like on screen and to have organizations sharing their content. Things like the Ice Bucket Challenge, folks might remember that, or It Gets Better, which came out of Blue State. Really relied on folks to create content on their own that supported the organization, and that content got shared and went viral. That is really, really hard to do now because we're all so overwhelmed. We've got 6 social media icons on our phone that's like lighting up all the time with things to do, and we've got too much email and too many WhatsApps and things like that. So it's much harder to make people kind of create content on their own, and I think that's where the influencer marketing, creator marketing really comes in, because it acknowledges that there's going to be a transactional relationship between the content creator and the organization or the brand, and that just makes it so much easier to get quality content on time, to have the rights to it, to be able to request edits and things like that. And so I think that is one of the biggest shifts, is that sort of move towards professionalization of user-generated content through things like influencer and creator marketing.
Hmm. Okay. And when did you move into influencer marketing and create People First?
So about 2018,
2018.
my co-founder and I saw that there was really nobody doing influencer marketing in politics. It was still
Mm.
relatively young on the brand side, but brands were definitely doing it. And unlike the Obama campaign, which brought all these personalization efforts to marketing in general, and kind of drove like consumer marketing led on influencers. So we created the company, with an eye towards doing political work on the Democratic side, and then COVID happened, and all of a sudden, everyone wanted us to create content around, getting your vaccine, wearing a mask, getting your booster, getting your kids vaccinated, and so we got really involved in public health. So, for the first couple of years of the company, we were probably 50% politics and 50% public health, and since then
Mm.
we've sort of gotten into a bunch of other verticals.
Hmm. Okay. What was it about influencer marketing that you knew? Well, let me rephrase. Let me take a step back. What was People First? Was this your first foray into running your own agency?
No, I started an agency with a good friend of mine, Bushwick Digital, which is
Mm.
focused on website development and branding, and it's a terrific agency, and it's still around, bigger than ever. Does a lot of really cool work, and I sit on the board of that, and so that was my first experience starting my own agency. I had learned a lot. I was at Blue State for 4 years, and then I went and worked at a media startup called Vocative. I ran their digital, and Vocative was like a Vice competitor, so it was like super cool, articles about attractive people and drugs and parties, and it was that kind of a place. It was interesting. I think they were doing some really cool things, but that's a really tough market, the digital media space. There
Hmm.
were a lot of startups that came out of that 2012, 2013, and I think maybe BuzzFeed is the only one still standing, barely standing. So I had a lot of experience when I started. Bushwick, we were just two people, and I was like the strategy, business development guy, and Chase was the design and the developer, and that obviously grew into a bigger shop, and then I left to start this because I find that agencies should really specialize in something,
Hmm.
and so uh, Bushwick was in a really good place, and I thought there was a real opportunity to do this on the to do influencer on the political side, and I didn't see any competitors in the space. And I had done some influencer work, in the past, and I played with all the platforms, and I knew their kind of strengths and their limitations, and I wanted to create an agency that addressed some of those too.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. So what was it about influencer marketing that you were like, we need to start an entire agency based around this strategy?
Well, because most of the platforms that you pay access to a platform $1,000 a month, and that you can search beauty and health and travel, and you can find influencers that are pretty good for those topics. But if you're working, if you're looking to recruit people who have experience with a rare disease, you're not going to find that on the platforms. If you're looking to find Native Americans in Montana to talk about public lands, which is a real campaign that we did, you're not going to find those folks on these commercially available platforms. So what I was thinking was, how do we, you know, take influencer, which stereotypically are beautiful people who live on the coast, and say, hey, everybody has influence in their communities. Everybody has influence, when they speak about certain issues and certain things. And how do we open up influencer marketing to other verticals like public health or B2B or politics? And so that's sort of what sparked it. We think of it as like precision influencer marketing. So we do campaigns that are really unique and interesting that I think other organizations that don't have sort of the mix of technology and organizing that we have would have real difficulties pulling off.
Mhm. Okay, awesome. So can you walk me through kind of how it works? For like do you still mostly focus on political clients, or have you guys expanded?
No, at this point, politics is probably 20 to 30% of
Oh
our
wow.
revenue. So
Okay.
a big chunk of it comes from advocacy, nonprofit work, public health, which is everything from organizations to state health departments. We have a big campaign right now encouraging people to get their mpox vaccines in New York City, and we've done campaigns where we've encouraged people to go out and make sure they're keeping up with their mammogram and things like that. So it's a real mix. And then we sell White Castle cheeseburgers, which is on the complete other side of the
Yeah.
spectrum, but working with gamers. So essentially, a client will come to us and they say, "Hey, we're trying to reach this audience," and we go, "That sounds great." And we collaborate with them to figure out who the ideal messenger is. So for White Castle, that's a gamer in an urban area. And then we go out and we basically cast it as if we're casting a movie. And one of the things we do is we run campaigns at scale. So you might work with an influencer shop and work with two or three large creators, and that's one kind of way to do this. But we would bring you 50 gamers in Atlanta, and you'd work with all 50, and you get 50 videos, and then you have a much better shot at having a couple of videos that really have a spark and get out there. And then we also scale that content through paid media. So you take those 50 gamers in Atlanta and you put that up on Twitch and on streaming and to very specific audiences, and folks see in the marketing themselves. And where capital I influencer marketing, when you're working with like a Mr. Beast or someone, is more aspirational, right? You're like, wow, like he's rich and famous, and you have a different vibe when you're engaging with Mr. Beast. But when you see somebody who is your age, who looks like you, who lives in your town, who has the same interest as you, that's a person who could be your friend or you went to school with or you might work with. And it's a different level of trust that you have with a creator like that. So we try not to focus too much on following. We focus on who's the best possible messenger to influence your audience.
Hmm. That makes sense. So does it typically break out? I'm sure this depends on the vertical and who you're trying to reach, but just back of the napkin math, humor me here. Would you say, and I'm not even sure if my math is right here, would you say 110K influencers are better than 1 million influencer?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's this thing in organizing called weak ties versus strong ties. So when you have a million followers, a lot of that million is going to be international. So probably maybe not relevant to your sales or your persuasion campaign. A lot of them are going to be bots or dead accounts. And there are people who sort of just follow a bunch of influencers, so you don't have that close of a connection. Versus somebody with 10,000 followers, they're much more likely, based on all of our research, to share affinities with you, similar interests, similar professions, similar geography. So scaling that up is really effective, and they just get much higher engagement rates and more comments per follower. So it is a harder challenge to work with 100 folks versus that one. But yeah, absolutely, you're gonna have better results with more influence, more creators.
Mhm. And obviously, I just pulled the 10K kind of out of thin
Sure.
air, but is there kind of a magic number of followers or some sort of engagement score that is kind of the intersection of maximum value, minimum cost?
Yeah, so we work up and down we call it the creator pyramid, up and down the pyramid. So like when we work with a client, we might propose to them, two macro creators, and we think of that as somebody with over 100 or 200,000 followers. Some mid-tier creators, those are folks in the 50,000 follower range, and then sort of the micro creators, and those are our sort of bread and butter, and they generally have between 2 and 20,000 followers.
Mm,
But
wow.
if you work with someone like my mom has done a campaign for us. She's a retired teacher, and she has 700 followers, right? But if you take
Wow.
if you take her content and she um, tags, uses the paid partnership tag, we can take that content and put it in front of all the retired teachers in New England, because my mom's
Mhm.
a retired teacher, and it doesn't matter how many followers she has because she's speaking basically one for
Hmm.
one to those to the audience. So, we find that the repurposing of the content, the paid boosting of the content goes a long way, and works incredibly well, scales incredibly well. We've done studies where we put it up against sort of like your traditional creative brand ads, and it works, it outperforms almost every single time.
Hmm. Okay. So we work a lot with Facebook ads, Instagram ads. Is there some apples to apples comparison there, like that you found? Obviously, you are a huge proponent of this type of marketing, so you probably like it better than direct Facebook ads.
Yeah, well, I spent most of my career in Facebook Business Manager. I know it incredibly well, and I'm a big fan of what you're able to do on Meta and on TikTok and LinkedIn with targeting. I think it's awesome, um, but I do think that when you combine sort of this personal, authentic content with the power of the specific targeting, that's where the magic comes in. So, this is not in lieu of Facebook advertising. This is providing you with content that's going to outperform a fancy video that you have made, that you can scale in the exact same ways that you just talked about.
Hmm. And then obviously you could even promote the influencer content with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok ads as
Yeah,
well.
totally. That's the way to do it, right?
So it's
So the way that it works, like kind of to get tactical, is there. Facebook has a paid partnership tag, and TikTok has a something called a Spark ad, and that basically it says, say I'm doing a Coca-Cola, I'm doing something with Coca-Cola, not a client, but call me Coke if you want to chat. Um, I'm drinking my Coke. I post it on my Instagram, Ryan New York, and then I tag Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola can boost that directly from my profile. So it doesn't look like it's coming from Coca-Cola. It looks like it's coming from Ryan New York. So you can
Mm,
scale that to the exact audience that you want to reach, and that's really where you see the power. We do like a political campaign that we might do. What we did, in Atlanta, we did a big campaign with the two Democratic senators who were running in the runoff, and we were able to get these young voters of color to make really impressive, passionate ads about why they were supporting them. They used the paid partnership tag, and then we put that up against the voter file. So we show basically every young person of color in Atlanta metro area. These folks who literally, like, they might have gone to school with, right, or they might live down the street from, and you're able to kind of create this surround sound effect where you've got 40, 50 people talking about why it's important to get out to vote. And every time you turn on every time you pull up Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or WhatsApp, you see these different faces of folks who seem really familiar to you. And that's where I think the real power lies. People get very caught up on, like, the number of followers. But organic reach isn't what it used to be for anybody, and the content is really the king. It's really what I think drives a successful campaign.
mhm. Awesome, awesome. And is there kind of, I'm sure again it's different for every audience you're going after, but is there kind of a tiered pricing system? They have 2,000 followers, it's this amount for a post, 10,000, 100,000, million.
Yeah, absolutely. It scales pretty much just like that.
Hmm.
You can pay $500 for a post, or you can work with a creator. We've paid $150,000 for a single post. So it really
Wow.
depends on yeah, it's a good business to be in. So yeah, it really depends on the creator. It depends on the type of content. How many posts. What the product is. People are willing to do something in favor of women's reproductive rights, if that's something, an issue they care about, for less than they would do for selling sneakers. So
Mhm.
that does come into it. What's interesting, though, is that the hardest thing to get people to talk about is politics, and the easiest thing to get people to talk about is cheeseburgers or some kind of general commercial project, because folks like there's that old saying, don't talk about politics or religion at the dinner table. A lot of folks kind of abide by that in their kind of social media lives. They try to because
Mm-hmm.
you're followed by, I talk about Vice President Harris a lot on my account, but I have family back in the Eastern Shore of Maryland who are not not progressives, and that opens me up to criticism from my aunts or uncles, right? And people feel that people have real lives, and so it is harder to get folks to talk about that. But if I posted about an ad for Tesla, well, maybe not Tesla, but some company that has less political kind of connection, people would have no, 100% of my Facebook friends would have no issue with that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it is interesting how much harder it is to get people to talk about politics.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Awesome. So, uh, this program, this show has a large audience that is financial advisors. Let's say a financial advisor wanted to get involved in influencer marketing. What any advice?
Yeah, well, it's that's funny that it's we have worked with financial advisors for campaigns for U.S. Bank and Lincoln Financial Group. We're working on a campaign right now that's getting out the vote amongst crypto owners.
Mm,
So, I think if you're a financial advisor, you've got a really unique position. If you're posting quality content that is, engaging people, informing people, educating people, you're building an audience. You're seen as credible in the space. You'd make a great creator for talking about financial services, and things sort of adjacent to that. And we see a big growth in B2B creator marketing. So, getting HR folks to talk about an HR platform, and then taking all those HR folks, putting it on LinkedIn, and putting them in front of every HR director in the country. Um, and they might not have a lot of followers, but that's not the point. The point is they are experts in the field of HR or financial advising, or what have you, and they can speak credibly about this tax software, or why you should vote with financial freedom in mind, or whatever the project might be. So, I encourage, this, in the niches there are riches. It's something
hmm
people on the internet say, and I think it's super true for creators. Like, when you have a very specific thing that you're an expert on, if the right campaign comes along, you're going to be perfect for it.
Okay. And what about advisors leveraging influencers to grow their businesses?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place for that. If you have worked with someone who's been a good financial advisor for you, to have I mean, this goes back to, like, back in the day, you would have people kind of do customer testimonials. It's not a different idea. um, Getting folks who have worked with you to talk about how valuable your advice has been, how valuable, how much money you've made them, or saved them, or helped them plan for retirement, or help them get a kid through college, right? When they put it in those kind of personal terms, and then you take that story of, like, if it wasn't for Bill, my financial advisor, I wouldn't have been able to send my son Johnny to NYU, because NYU is really expensive. And then you take that piece of content and you put it in front of, using the meta targeting tools, the LinkedIn targeting tools, of parents who have kids who are teenagers, who are thinking about, hopefully they're thinking about it before they're teenagers, but thinking about how they're going to pay for college. That's a really powerful piece of marketing.
Mm,
And you can
hmm
do that for every category, right? You can do new homeowners, planning for college, planning for retirement. One of the things we do is we find creators who have different in different life cycles, and we've literally done campaigns about saving for retirement, with people talking about why their retirement is easy because they planned, and folks should plan for retirement. And then young people talking about the importance of planning for retirement because they want to have a comfortable retirement. And I think between those two different age categories, you can speak to sort of the middle.
hmm Yeah, awesome. No, that's funny you say that. That's one of my biggest recommendations. I'm like, do you have any clients that will let us record them raving about you, and we will just bury the world with that
Yeah,
video?
and have them get specific and personal, because that's what works. I think people
hmm
people people are tired of being marketed to. So when something comes off as an ad, like your brain automatically just sort of like says, I can ignore this. But if they pull you in by saying, I know how hard it is to raise a kid and pay for college, you're like, yeah, that is hard. And then all of a sudden, before you realize it, you're watching this thing that is an ad. I think that's
Mm.
what's the most effective. And it's a struggle that you have with clients, because clients think like, well, why aren't they wearing the baseball cap with my brand on it? Or why aren't they like saying the brand in the first 5 seconds? And it's like, yeah, you can do that. And that'll definitely, give you more impressions. But yeah, but if you want the ad to be effective, you want to hook people in and
Yeah.
make it real, conversational, authentic, all that good stuff.
We take the brands off all of the videos that we promote, and they
Yeah.
do 10 times better.
Yeah, definitely. Nobody wants to see,
Nobody wants to be sold to.
nobody wants to
Yeah.
be sold to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're coming towards the end of our time. I wish we had more. I could ask you questions for the rest of the afternoon. As a fellow agency owner who is far uh more up and coming than yourself, how, this is a stupid question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. How'd you grow to this size? I am so in awe.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I have a great co-founder who came with a lot of connections in the commercial space. I had a lot of connections in the politics and advocacy space, and for the first year, my days were just full of annoying everyone I knew on LinkedIn, over email. You know, it was the COVID era, right? So there wasn't even like, I couldn't be like, hey, let's meet for a coffee or a drink, because that was literally illegal in New York. So it was it's just a lot. It is a lot of I hate the term hustle, but I think it sort of applies. And building networks. So right now I'm involved with an organization called Founders for Kamala, and we're working to elect her president, and it's this incredible group of people, like hundreds of people, and I'm on a WhatsApp and Slack, and we're chatting all day, and those are all people that I'm gonna have connections with after this campaign ends. So your network, the social networks you build in school, in church, in your jobs, like those are so important. Keeping up with folks, like remembering birthdays, all this stuff really counts. And I started working in this industry when I was in my early 20s, and the folks that I work with now run marketing and digital firms, run teams at brands and organizations. So the people that you kind of come up with, your peers, like they eventually take over, and knowing those folks and keeping up with them is super important. And then being willing to like do simple favors, like make intros to people, like make referrals, like people remember that. And everybody wants to kind of return a good favor. So I find myself like making sure every day I have time to like help somebody out, even if there's no transactional thing for me in that moment. But in 5 years they might be running digital at a big agency, and say, hey, we need an influencer, and reach out to me. So yeah, I mean, maybe none of this is like earth-shattering advice, but it's a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Um, so as I mentioned previously, a large part of the audience is financial advisors. You are a successful business owner, founder, exeter. To the extent that you are comfortable sharing, because you are obviously an incredibly ideal client for most financial advisors. To the extent you're comfortable sharing, do you have a financial advisor? If so, how did you find them? What made you decide on them? If not, would you ever be open to a financial advisor?
I've had some. I've never had good luck with financial advisors. I've had a couple that were not great, and I haven't had like a great experience. I switched accountants a few times, and when you're starting a small business, and this, like it is a pain. It is a pain in the butt. There's so much paperwork and forms and money you need to put away, and it becomes really complicated. And we had some bad advice early on in my
No,
previous
no.
startup, and we've been better. I think we've been better this time. So yeah, I'm definitely open to the idea of working with someone who specifically understands sort of the small business side of things. I live. I'm a digital nomad. I live abroad, so that might complicate my tax financial
Hmm.
situation. So yeah, I think some people with that kind of specific background and expertise, I'd definitely be interested in chatting with.
Okay, awesome. Were your previous advisors, were they fiduciaries or RIAs?
See, I don't even know.
Okay. That this was something I learned when they became our niche. The fiduciary can only do things that are in your best interest. And I heard that, I was like, shouldn't they all be fiduciaries? But they're
Yeah.
not all fiduciaries.
Oh, that is worth knowing. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. So that I was like, wow. So and for the most part, marketing wise, we can only market with RIAs independent. We can't even, they're not allowed to market the non-fiduciaries. It's quite odd. Awesome. Well, thank you for your candidness there. My final question for you, it is an open-ended question. You can take it in any direction that you like. And the question is, what are you working towards?
oh gosh, every founder would say an exit. um, yeah. I mean, I think the real plan is to keep building the company, get it in as strong a place as possible, and then hopefully join a larger organization, so we have more support, more deal flow. And having to hunt your own food is tough. So I think that is probably what I am most focused on, right now. And
Mhm.
it's gonna be a journey. We're only like 4.5 years in, and I think we've got a couple more years before that's a possibility. But keep your head down and keep bringing in the revenue.
Well, you absolutely knocked it out of the park in these 4 years. So I'm sure very, very exciting things await. Where can my audience find out more about you and everything you're working on?
Totally. You can check out People First at peoplefirst.cc. You can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Davis. You may throw the link in the in the
Hmm.
show notes, and you can
Of
find me
course.
on all the social media channels. I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah. Awesome. Ryan, well, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome. I mean, I have like 27 other questions that we didn't have time for. So we'll have to have you back on again. You're awesome, man. Keep
Thanks
keep
so much for having me.
keep doing what you're doing. And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in and keep on growing out there, everybody. See ya.